Is the screen visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
So in our previous session, we have seen how to create methods and how to create an object in order to access those methods. And what is a constructor? What is the difference between static method and constructor? And what is a static block? And when compared with public static void main method, which has more priority than that? So it is static block which has the more priority, and how we call the constructor, and how we can create a parameterized constructor. So all these things we have seen in our previous class. And I have given an exercise program. Did anyone get a chance to write a program for that? Any doubts in that program? Were you able to create that program? Or do I need to explain it?
Yeah.
Okay. So the program was to create a area of a circle, calculate area of a circle, circumference of a circle, and diameter of a circle. When radius is given. So the formula of area of a circle is pi r square. Okay. Which is equal to pi into r into r. Circumference is 2 into pi into r. And diameter is 2 into r. So these are the three formulas. Now we have to create a program in order to calculate area, circumference, and diameter of a circle. Okay. The value of pi is also given. Value of pi is 3.14. Now we have to calculate it. So let's write a program. Okay, let me write a method for creating and for calculating area. So public double area which accepts radius. Okay. First observe the program, then I'll explain.
Uh, Hello, madam, you are not audible.
Yeah, I'm writing the program. Once it is done,
Okay.
just observe it. I'll explain you. Okay, I have created all the three methods. Method to calculate area, circumference, and diameter. Now, so what is this pi and why I am defining it as final? the value of pi is a constant value, right? So that cannot be changed. 3.14 is fixed. So if I don't define it as final, here I can change the value. If it is not final, final means the value of it is fixed. You cannot modify it. As pi is a constant, right? Its value is always 3.14 and it cannot be changed. So in order to restrict any modifications for the value of pi, I defined it as final. If I define a variable as a final, that means you cannot modify it. Suppose if I want to assign some other value for pi, suppose I want to do this one, it is throwing error. See, cannot make a static reference to s. Okay, this is non-static. Okay, let me define it as static. I'll tell you. So now that issue is fixed. Remove final modifier for pi. That means it is asking to remove final. If you want to modify the value of pi, the variable should not be defined as final. If you are defining a variable as final, then you cannot modify that value. As the pi value is constant, so I defined it as final. So in anywhere you want to update the value of pi, it will throw an error. So that is the reason why I gave the value as pi, and why it is asking to make the variable as static, because this is a static method, right? Main is a static method. So you can access static variables in static method. That is why it asked us to change the value, to convert the pi variable to static. Okay. So now I don't want to use it in a static method, main method. I want to use in non-static method. So I'll leave this as final double. I don't want this pi as static. Okay. So we'll see this variables concept in the next session, the 3 different types of variables. Then you will be very clear why it will not allow static variables inside non-static methods and all those things. Okay, for now, let me print these values, calculate the area. The area of circle is, I will call the method area where I have to pass the radius. So let me define radius here. Int radius is equal to, I'll take the radius as 10. Okay. Now I'll pass this radius over here. Oh, I should create an object, right? So that is why it is throwing error. Let me create an object to this class. Circle demo cd is equal to new circle demo. Okay, now I have to use it like this, cd dot. Okay, now system.out.println is circumference cd dot okay. The down. Okay, the program is done. So I'll create a final variable pi whose value is fixed and it is equal to 3.14. Okay. Now in this public static void main method, I am reading the value of radius. So I'm taking the radius of a circle as 10. Now in order to access any methods, we need to create an object to that class. Using that object only, we can access the other methods apart from main method. So at line number 8, we are creating an object for this class, circle demo class. So this is the object, CD. So using the CD, I'm accessing all these 3 methods like area, circumference, and diameter. But for these methods, they need radius. So I'm passing the radius. What is the radius value? 10. So I'm passing this radius value to all these methods. So it will return, what is returning? So pi in, if we are calling area, it is returning pi into radius into radius. What is the value of pi? Constant value 3.14. It is 3.14 into radius. This will be calculated and it will be returned. If I call the circumference method, it will calculate this part 2 into pi into radius. Pi value is already available here, so no need to pass it. So if I'm defining any variable out of all these methods. So public static void method is starting from here. But before this, I am out of all these methods, I am defining this variable, pi variable. So no need to pass that value here. If I'm defining any variable inside any block like this, inside any method, then only I have to pass that value. If I'm not, if I'm not declaring it within any method and I'm declaring it outside all the methods, so this method is restricted to this part. This method is up to here. This method is up to here. So outside this, outside all the methods, if I'm declaring any variable, then no need to pass that variable as a value, as a parameter. No need to pass it. So we can, it will be directly read from here. It will be directly taken. If it is within the method, if within the method, if you are declaring any variable, then only you have to pass it. Got the difference? So why I'm not passing the pi value here? We have declared the pi above all the methods, outside of all the methods. So that is why it will be visible for all the methods and no need to pass it as a parameter here. If I'm declaring any variable within a method, so radius, I'm declaring it here. So I'm passing it. I need to pass this radius value here. It will not be visible outside this block. Outside this block, it will, the radius value will not be visible. So that is why I'm passing the radius to these methods. Clear all of you? Now, if I run this program, the area of circle is 314. The circumference of the circle is 62.8 and so on till 0. The diameter of circle is 20. Is this program clear? Any doubts in this program? Don't hesitate. If you have any confusion, you can ask. Why I'm not passing pi value to the method and why I am passing only radius to any particular method? Because this radius variable, I have defined it inside a method. That is why I need to pass it as a parameter when I'm trying to use it outside that method. But whereas this pi value, I am declaring it outside all the methods. So that is why I don't need to pass it as a parameter. Is this point clear to all of you? And why I'm defining this pi value as final? Because I don't want to change this pi value anyway, because this is a constant value. So for that purpose, I am restricting the access of modifying this pi value. In order to do that, I need to declare it as final. We use the final keyword in order to make it final, and nowhere we can modify that value. So that is the reason why we declared it as final. Clear all of you? Do I need to explain in once again, or is it clear?
Once again.
Okay. Which part? Completely or? Okay. So, okay, let me first tell you about the variables numbers. So final keyword, we use it if I don't want to modify this variable. So this value, if it is changing continuously, then there is no use of using this pi. The value of pi is always constant and it should not be modified. That is the reason I have. So if I don't use this, the value of pi can be changed anywhere, but that should not happen because pi value is constant. That is the reason why we are using the final keyword. I'm declaring this variable pi outside of all these methods. So it will be visible to all these methods. Okay, let me show you the variable types. Okay. Actually, there are three types of variables. Static variables, local variables. The third one is instance variables. Okay. First, we will discuss local variables. Local variables are variables which are bound to the block. Local variables are variables. If you define any variable inside a particular block, inside this curly braces, like any method, inside any method, if you are defining any variable, then we call them as local variables. The scope of this variables is within this block. The scope of variable is within this block, even though if you declare it as public or whatever modifier it might be. So if you are declaring any variable within a block, then we call it as local variables. So this is my class. Okay, this is the method. So inside this method, if I'm defining any variable int a is equal to 10, then we call this a variable as a local variable. The scope of this local variable is only within this method. Okay, so this type of variables, we call them as local variables. Now, we'll discuss about static variables. So what is a static variable? So if we are declaring any variable as a static, so if we are defining any variable as static variables are also called as class variables. Okay. So if we are defining any variables as static, these variables will be accessible only within the static methods. Accessible only within the static methods. If a method, I am defining a variable out, local variables can be defined only within the method, whereas static and instance variables, these two should be declared globally. That means outside of all the methods. Static and instance variables should be defined outside of all the methods. So static and instance variables should be defined outside of all the methods. We call this type of declaration as global declaration. So, global declaration. If you are declaring any variable outside of all the methods, that means we are declaring it globally. So outside of all the methods, suppose I have this method 2 here, which is static. This is a static method. Okay. And here you have a non-static method. This is a non-static method. This is a non-static method. So outside all these methods, you have to define either static or instance variables. Local variables, you can define it inside the method. But whereas static and instance variable, you have to declare them outside of all these methods. So you have to declare it here. After the class, you have to declare all your static and instance variables. Okay. So if you want to make a variable as static, just use the keyword static. Static int b is equal to 20. So if you just give the keyword static, then it will act as static. So this static variable can be accessible only within the static methods. So in static method, this is a static method, right? So inside this only you can access the b value. If you try to access it in a non-static method, then you have to use class name. So class name dot that variable. So you can access it in both static and non-static. But the thing is, in static method, you can directly access it. But whereas in non-static method, you have to use the class name. Class name dot b. Okay. This is how we can access the static variables. It has the scope of complete class. So local variables, it is a block. It is a method or block. The scope of a variable is within the method or within the block. Whereas the scope of the static variables or class variables is complete class. You can access it in both static methods and non-static methods. Okay, but whereas instance variables, you can access them only within non-static methods. Instance variables, you will be able to access it only in non-static methods. Suppose I am declaring one more variable here, int c is equal to 30, which is not static. This is not a static variable. That means I'm not using the static keyword. That means it is an instance variable. So if you are not using any static keyword, then it is an instance variable. If it is an instance variable, if I try to access it in a static method, suppose this is my static method. If I'm trying to use this variable c, it will throw an error. You cannot access it. You cannot access it. You cannot access an instance variable within a static method. Only in non-static methods you can use this instance variables. So in this non-static method, if I try to use the variable c, it will allow you. It will allow you only only within the non-static method. Then why? So what is the difference between static and instance variable? So they'll come into picture at the time of memory allocation. Why we need to declare a variable as static, non-static, and what is the scope of static variable is complete class. In the entire class, you will be able to access them. But whereas instance variable, you can be able to access it only in the non-static methods. Why it is like that? We'll see. So this is local variable. This is static. This is instance. These are the three different types of variables. So local, if you are defining a local variable as a local, that is, it is in between this block in a is equal to 10. If you are defining it like this, the memory for this will be allocated when we are starting this block. The memory will be allocated. Once the block is closed, it will remove that from the memory. So this variable will be created in the memory at the time of open curly braces. This variable, the memory will be allocated for this local variable, and the memory will be removed once we reach the end of this block. So memory allocation will be only within this block. Only within this block, the memory will be allocated and it will be accessible. Once this block is completed, and this variable a will be removed from the memory. Okay, but whereas for static, suppose I have a class ABC, okay, and I'm creating, this is public static void main method, and I'm creating a static variable, static int b is equal to 20. Okay, now I'm creating 3 objects for this class. I can do that. I can create any number of objects for a particular class. Suppose I am creating an object ABC. A is equal to new ABC. Okay, this is the first object. ABC. This is A1, this is A2 is equal to new ABC. This is the second object I am creating. Suppose, let me remove this. ABC. A3 is equal to new ABC. So these are 3 different objects I am creating for the same class. For this class, I am creating 3 objects. I can do that. The scope of this variable, static variable B, will be, suppose these are so whenever you create an object, memory will be assigned, right? So whenever you create an object using the new keyword, that particular memory will be allocated for this object. So this is A1 object, this is A2 object, and this is A3 object. So for these 3 different objects, the memory will be allocated. Now, if you're defining a static variable, int b is equal to 20. So this is b is equal to 20. It will be the same for all these 3 objects. It will be the common for all 3 objects. So this b value, even though if you are, so if I remove this at the time of creation of the objects, this will be created. So B object will be created. But when you remove A1, this will not be removed. B value will not be removed from the memory. If you remove A2, B value will not be removed from the memory. If you remove all the three objects, then only this value B will be removed from the memory. Only if all the three objects are removed, that is the class is completed. Once the class is completed, then only this value will be removed from the memory. So if you are removing A1, B will be there. If you are removing A2, B will be there. But if you remove all the three objects, then only this B will be removed, because it is common for all the three. Common for all the three. Only once these three are removed, then only this B value will be removed. The scope of this variable, static variable, is complete class. So it is not dependent on the objects. It is not dependent on the objects. How many objects you want to create, you create. How many objects you want to remove, you remove it. But the scope will be through entire class. It will not be for a particular object. Okay, this is about the static variable. Now, if you see the instance variable, let me take the same class ABC. Now I'm defining non-static. So instance variable I'm creating. Int C is equal to 30. Public static void main. This is my main method. And here I am creating three objects. ABC, B1 is equal to new ABC. ABC. B2 is equal to new ABC. ABC, B3 is equal to new ABC. So these are the three different objects I am creating. But for instance variable, how it will work is, this is B1 memory, this is B2 memory, this is B3 memory. For each and every object, an instance variable will be created. So for B1, one C variable will be created and its value is 30. For B2, one C variable will be created and its value is 30. For B3 also, for B3 object also, one C variable will be created and the value will be 30. So for each and every object, one variable will be created. Whereas for static, only one variable will be created for any number of objects. Only after deleting all the three objects, then only this B value will be removed from the memory. Until then, this variable will be available. So if you are creating three objects and if you are removing two, still this B variable will be available for the third object. But whereas with this instance variable, one variable will be created for one object. So if you are removing B1 object from the memory, this C will be removed. If you are removing B2 from the memory, this C will be removed. If you are removing B3, this C will be removed. This C value will be removed. So this is the difference between instance and static. Static, if you are defining it as a variable as a static, only one static variable will be created, even though if you are creating n number of objects. One static variable for any number of objects. But whereas for instance variables, if you are creating one variable, means it will be created for each and every object. For each and every object, one variable will be created. One instance variable will be created like this. So that is the difference. If we see an example, you will get to know that. So I am keeping this circle demo program for a while aside. Now I'll show you this variable types demo. Okay. Now I'm creating one static variable, static int A is equal to 20. Sorry, this variables I should define it globally, not inside a method. So static int A is equal to 20. So this is a static variable. Now non-instance variable, static, int B is equal to 30. This is an instance variable. And now let me create a local variable, int C is equal to 30. Let me comment it here. This is class or static variable. This is instance variable. And this is local variable. Okay. Now, let me create two methods. One is static method and the other one is non-static method. Public static demo. So I have to write the return type void demo. Okay. In this method, this is a static method. In this method, I am trying to access this variable C. System.out.println. This is the value of C variable or instance variable. Let me write it like this. Let me check if I'm able to access this value C. Sorry, it is B, right? Instance is B. So if I'm trying to access this instance variable inside a static method, it is throwing an error. What is the error? Cannot make a static reference to the non-static field. Here the non-static variable is B, and I'm trying to access it within the static block. So static method, if I'm trying in this static method, if I'm trying to access an instance variable, it is not allowing me. It is throwing an error because static is something related to class, but instance is something related to object, specific to object. Once the object is created, instance variable will be created. Once the object is removed, instance variables will be removed. But whereas static, it will have the complete scope within the class. So complete class, you will be able to access the static variables. So that is the difference. So it will not allow you to access non-static within the static method. Non-static variables cannot be accessed within the static method. So so this is the value of a static variable. And let me print the static variable value, which is A. Okay. Now let me create public static void, sorry, non-static method, right? Public void dummy for accessing both. This is the static variable inside non-static method. Inside non-static method, I'm trying to access a static variable. So if I'm trying to give this value, it will allow me because this is in the same class. So I can directly use it. If I'm trying to access this static variable outside this class, I have to use the class name like this. So Control C, let me do it as per the syntax. Class name dot variable name. So this is how you have to work. Now system.out.println. This is the non-static variable inside non-static method. So if I want to use it, I'll print the value B. Okay. So these are the two methods, static method and dummy method. And inside these methods, how I am trying to use class variables and instance variables. Obviously, you cannot use this local variable outside this method. If you try to access it, it will definitely throw an error. So the scope of this variable will be only within this method. So you will not be able to access it outside that method. So definitely C variable cannot be accessed outside because it is a local variable. Now, let me try to create objects for this class. So I'll create 3 objects for this class. One is equal to new. VT. Okay, these are the 3 different objects I have created. So static variable can be accessed in both static and non-static. But once if I remove, so instance variable are specific to objects, right? So if I try to access the instance variable, once the object is removed, then it will throw an error, right? So if I try to access the instance variable, once the object is removed, then it will be removed. So let me try to do that. System.out.println vt1.b. So using this object, I am able to access this instance variable. Now, system.out.println vt2.b. I'll be able to access it. System.out.println vt3.b. I'll be able to access it. So using these three objects, I'll be able to access it. But once if this object is removed, so vt2 object is removed from the memory. If I try to access this object vt2.b object, it will throw me an error. It will throw an error. I want to show it how it will throw error once the object is removed. Just give me a second. Okay. Now, vt1.b is equal to, so initial value of b is 30. Now for object vt1, I want to modify this b value. So I'll take it as 15. Okay. Now, let me differentiate all these three. vt2.b, which is equal to, I want to modify it to 40. vt2 object b value is, okay. So vt3, I want to let it be like that. I want to take it as 20. vt1, object 1 b value is 15, object 2 b value is 40, and object 3 b value, I don't want to modify it. Let me keep it like that. So this is, so for instance variable, I'm trying to modify the values, and let's see the output here. If I run this program, so vt1 object b value is 15, vt2 object b value is 40, and finally v23 object b value is 30, because I didn't modify it. And now why these are not printed? Because I'm not accessing these methods. I'm not accessing this method. So if I want to access the static method, just give demo. If I want to access the dummy method, just vt1.dummy. If I give it, so based on the objects, the value of the variables will be modified if it is an instance variable. But if it is a static variable, it will be the same for the entire class. But whereas instance variable, they are specific to objects. So for one particular object, the value, so one instance variable will be created. And if you want to modify that object value relate specific to that object, you can modify it. So now if I run this program, so this is the value of a static variable 20. This is the static variable inside non-static method. This is the non-static variable inside non-static method, which is 15, because I'm calling it using VT1 object. So for VT1, what is the B value? That value will be printed here. So if I'm calling it using VT2, VT2.dummy. So whatever the B value for this object VT2, so VT2.B is 40. So here it will print 40 for B value when I'm calling it using the VT2, the VT2 object. So if I run this program, see, the static variable value, you cannot modify it. It will be the same. So, but for non-static variable, first time it printed 15, second time it printed B value as 40. The same variable, I am trying to access it using different objects. The variable is same, but trying to access it using different objects. So that will be possible only if the variable is instance variable. For static, you cannot declare, you cannot modify the value of that variable because it will be the constant, it will be the same for all the objects. Is it clear or any confusion for these three different type of variables? Are you able to get the difference? What is static variable, what is instance variable, and what is local variable? Any doubts, please ask. It is a bit confusing, but still, if you have any doubts, you can ask me. Is it clear for all of you?
Yeah.
Okay. So that is the difference between static, instance, and local variable. Now, if you come back to the circle demo, can someone tell me what is the variable type which I have defined at line number 4? Line number 4, what is that variable type? So even though it is wrong, please reply, no issues. So what is the variable type among the three?
Sorry.
Don't get confused with this final keyword, okay? Final is for not modifying this pi value. If you give a keyword static, then only it will be a static variable. If you are not
Yes,
using the static keyword, then it is an instance variable. Okay. Now the keyword, the variable pi is a instance variable. So instance variable, can I access it inside the static method? Can I access it in the static method? Can I use it here? Just think, instance variable, can I access it in a static method? What is the scope of a static instance variable? Can someone please tell me the scope of an instance variable?
Within the class.
Within the class. Then what about the static variable?
Static
So
is related to class. So the scope is up to the class.
now this is not a static variable, right? It is
This
an
is
instance
not.
variable.
Yes,
The
yes.
scope of an instance variable is only within the non-static methods. Non-static methods, and which can be accessible using the object. By using the object, what and all methods you can access, only to that methods the scope of an instance variable will be there. Because instance is something related to object, and static methods you cannot access it using the object. It is related to class, right? Static methods cannot be accessed using the objects. So within the static block, you cannot access the instance variables. If I try to access the instance variable, see, if I give pi value here, it is throwing an error. What is it is throwing? Cannot make a static reference to a non-static field. So the scope of an instance variable is only within the methods which can be accessible using the object. So this method area, how I am accessing this method? Using the object of this class. CD is an object. Using the object, I am able to access this method. Circumference is what type of method it is? It is a non-static method, and I am accessing it using the object, right? The same thing for diameter also. So the scope of an instance variable is for the methods which are non-static. Non-static methods only will have access to this instance variable. If it is a static variable, if I'm defining it as static, suppose final static double pi, then I'll be able to use it across all the methods of that class. I will be able to use it inside this area. So inside this class, I'll be able to access it inside the circumference, inside this method, and inside all these methods, I will be able to access it. Why it is throwing error here is because here I'm passing. I gave the parameter type as int, but here pi is of type double. So that is why it is throwing an error. If I change this double, if I change this radius to double here, then error will be gone. Got the difference? Initially it was int and here I am passing double. So that is why type mismatch has happened. It has thrown error. So got the difference between static and non-static variable, instance and static variables?
Yeah.
Any
For
confusion? Yeah.
For non-static methods, we need to create the object and calling the methods, right?
Yes.
For static, no need to create the object directly. We can call.
Yeah, using the class name dot method name.
Okay.
Any other doubts? These two programs, is it clear for all of you? If you have any doubts, please let me know. Let me, this is VT3 object. Okay. So that static program which I have given, is it clear for all of you or any doubts in that static exercise program? Static program. Were you able to understand that program? So if someone replies only, I'll understand.
Actually, we didn't see.
Okay, no issues. So check it today.
Okay.
And
Okay.
if you have any doubts, come and we will discuss it in the next session. Okay. So in these two programs, if you are able to understand the difference between static variable and instance variable only, you will be able to understand why I have defined this pi value at global level and why I'm not passing the pi value and only radius, only local variables only.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
instant variable is related to object, madam.
Yes, object. They are
But
specific.
static variable is class related, madam.
Yes. Class. It is related to class. Static is related to class, right? So for one class, how many number of objects you create? So that is not bothered. So how
Okay, ma'am.
many
Thank you
objects
so
you
much.
want to create, you create it, but only one static variable will be created for all the objects. But whereas for instance variable, for each and every object, so what I can say is instance is nothing but an object. The other name of object is instance. So for each object you create for a particular class, one instance variable will be created. So based on the object, you can access it and you can modify with that variable. That is what we have done here. See, we have created three objects. So for three objects, I have given different values for this B variable. One variable is B, but I have gave different. One second.
Some disturbance is there. Your voice is not audible.
Okay. Dinesh, can you go on mute? Dinesh, if your doubt is cleared, can you go on mute?
Ma'am, clear, madam.
Okay, can you please go on mute?
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, now is it clear? My voice, is it clear for you?
Yeah.
Okay. So if it is an instance variable, only one variable we have created, which is B. But we have for each and every object, VT1, VT2, VT3, for each and every object, one instance variable will be created. So for VT1, what is the instance variable B will be created, and that variable value, I am modifying it like this: VT1 dot B is equal to 15. For the same variable B, same instance variable B, using the second object, VT2 object, I am modifying its value. Clear? Now, so using the VT1 object, I am calling this dummy method. This dummy method I am trying to call it, and I am printing the variable value. B value, I am printing it here. So what is the VT1 dot B? VT1 dot B is 15. So 15 will be printed at line number 29. So at line number 29, if I am calling this method dummy using VT1 object, whatever is the value for this particular object, VT1 dot B is 15. So 15 will be printed. If I am calling this same method using VT2, which is the second object, VT2 object, the variable, instance variable value, I have modified it. It is not 30 anymore. It is 40. New value is assigned. So if I'm calling this dummy method using VT2 object, this line number 29 will print the B value as 40. It will not be 30. Got the difference, all of you? So for instance variable, one variable will be created for each and every object. Okay. And that's all from my side for today. If you have any doubts, we can stay. Otherwise, we can wind up this call.
Ma'am, small doubt, ma'am.
Yes, tell me.
Methods and construction yesterday class, ma'am. Both are similar, madam.
Methods and constructors. So constructor is also a method, but the difference is method name can be anything. Constructor name should be the class name. See, method name, if it is a normal method, the name can be anything, but whereas for constructor, it should be the class name. That is one difference. The second one is method can return any value or cannot return any value, but you have to define the return type. The return type is a must. But for whereas a constructor, if I'm defining a no need to define any return type, just give no need to define any return type for a constructor. And constructor will, that is the third difference is constructors will be automatically called whenever you are creating an object. Suppose, let me show you here. Someone tell me how many number of times can you hello? Please, can you go on mute? Dinesh? Dinesh? Hello? Hello? Hello?
Ma'am,
Can you please go on mute? Okay. So, can someone tell me how many number of times this line number 25 will be printed? Because I am creating 3 objects. Every time an object is created, constructor will be called. So, for 3 objects, this method constructor will be called 3 times. For every method, one time it will be called, as I'm creating 3 different objects. So 3 times this constructor will be called. So what are the 3 differences I have told you? The first difference between an object and a constructor is the name of object can be anything, but the name of the constructor should be the same as the class name. That is the first difference. Second difference is constructor will not return anything, so no need to define any return type for a constructor. But whereas a method, even though if it returns or not return anything, you have to define the return type. Return type is a must for a method, but for whereas constructor, no need to define any return type. Even void also not needed. If you are not returning anything also, no need to define any void. So that is the second difference. Third one is constructor will be automatically called whenever we are creating an object, but methods should be called either by using the object or the class name. If it is a static method, you have to call that method using the class name. If it is a non-static method, you have to call using the object. You have to explicitly call the method. But whereas constructor, no need to call. It will be automatically called whenever you are creating an object. So these are the differences between constructor and a method. Is it clear? Dinesh, is it clear for you? If I run this program now, this line number 25 will be executed 3 times because we are creating objects 3 times. Okay, so let's run this program. See, this is a constructor, this is a constructor, this is a constructor. 3 times it is called because we are creating 3 different objects. 3 different objects we are creating. So 3 times the constructor will be called. And after that only vt1.b is equal to 15 will be executed. Then this line will be executed. Then these 2 will be executed. And finally, we are calling these 2 methods vt1.dummy, vt2.dummy will be executed. Is this clear, all of you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other doubts?
Can you please show me the yesterday's constructor program?
Yes. I think this is the program, right?
Yesterday you showed me directly we are passing the parameters, right? That
Yes, you
one.
can pass it.
But no need to define the initialization, right?
You can do that as well. So int I is equal to 10, comma j is equal to 5. You can do this one. And I can
Okay.
pass I and j value here.
Okay. Here also can we pass the parameters directly
Where?
without initialization?
Yeah, we can use line number 8 and pass the variables like this, or we can directly pass the values 10, comma 5. Anything you can do it.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Now, in the same way, if you want to pass any variables, you can do it here, even for this also.
Okay.
Any other doubts? Yes, Pratap, do you have any doubts?
Yes, ma'am. We are not giving any value to the new variable. So the b value should be the 20, no, ma'am, for the all the 3. VT1, VT2, 3, and
So initially it will be 30 only. So if you are not assigning any value, so if line number 13 is not there, so if it is not there, then the value of vt1.b is also 30. Okay, let me write it clearly here. Suppose this is an instance variable. Int b is equal to 30, right? And I'm creating 3 objects in public static void main. I'm creating 3 objects. Okay, vt1, vt2, vt3. These are 3 different objects. So how the memory will be allocated? This is vt1, vt2, vt3. This is vt1 object, this is vt2 object, this is vt3 object. This is the value of b. Initial value is 30. So 30 will be there for all these 3 objects. Okay. For vt1.b is equal to 30. vt2.b is equal to 30. Initial values. vt3.b is also equal to 30. These are the initial values. Now what we have done, I have modified that value. vt1.b is equal to 15. I modified the vt1.b value. Initially it was 30. Now I changed it to 15. So it will not be 30 anymore. It has been changed to 15. So now it will be 15. So this 30 will be removed and the new value will be 15. And now if I'm modifying vt2.b is equal to 40. So initial value was 30. Now I removed it and changed it to 40. Here also 30 will not be there, 40 will be replaced. And now we are calling this dummy method. In this dummy method, we are printing the variable b value, system.out.println, b value we are printing. So as this is a non-static method, right? We have to call this non-static method using object. If I'm calling it using vt1 object, vt1 dot dummy, if I'm calling this, so what this method will be called, and here I'm trying to print the b value. So what is the b value for this object vt1? It is 15. So if I'm calling it using vt1, this value will be printed, 15 will be printed. If I'm calling this using the second object, vt2 object, vt2 dot dummy, then what? So this method will be called again, and here we are printing the b value. What is the b value for this object? It is 40. So now for this method vt2.dummy, it will print 40. For this, it will print 15. For this, it will print 40. Now the same method, if I'm calling it using the third object, vt3 object, vt3.dummy, if I'm calling it, the same method will be called, but the b value, whatever here we are trying to print, it will print the 30 value. So it will print 30. Is it clear, Pratap?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But if it is a static variable, no. If it is a if you are defining static variable a is equal to 20, so it will not allow you all these things, because static is related to class, not objects. So no need of all these objects. Only one will be created. Only one static will be created, and you will not be able to modify that using these objects like this. Directly, if you want to modify a is equal to 30 or 40 like this, you can do it. But using the objects, you cannot do that. And once if you're changing it, it will be changed for the entire class. It will be changed for the entire class, not like objects like this.
Okay, ma'am.
Clear? Okay. Good. Good that you are asking doubts in today's class. I feel happy. Yeah. Any other doubts?